So my name's Christina McMellon, as Joe says, and I'm the research associate with the Triumph Network with particular responsibility for young people's involvement. In practice for this webinar, that means two things. It means firstly that I support our youth advisory group, which is a group of 16 young people from across the UK who are involved in all of the major decisions in the network. And so, of course, that means that they're also involved in decisions around the funding call and will be assessing applications. The second thing is that I have a responsibility for providing support to ensure that co-production is at the heart of all of the proposals that we support. And that's what I'm going to be focusing on in the next couple of slides. But obviously, any sort of questions that people have, please feel free to ask in the Q&A or at the end. Now, how do I move on? There. Okay, so we're very aware in Triumph that co-production means very different things to different people. And what we want to emphasize is that we don't see co-production as a set process with kind of very set elements that we require different projects to have. It's rather that we see co-production as a collaboration between young people, researchers, practitioners, and policymakers, and that's really at the core of the Triumph Network, is that young people are one of those four stakeholder groups. She says that's four stakeholder groups, and are equal partners in that. So we really see co-production as a collaboration, and it's a collaboration that's unique to the context, to the topic, and to the people concerned with the research project. As such, just to kind of emphasize that we're definitely not saying that young people are always right, that we have to do what young people are suggesting, but really about including young people as equal partners that in conversations. And that can be quite difficult for some of us, particularly researchers. So we really want to suggest that this is that co-production is underpinned by this set of principles. So that co-production takes an asset-based approach to working with young people, seeing young people as partners rather than as passive research participants, building on young people's existing capabilities, their skills, their experience, and their views at all stages in the research process. And I suppose there's an assumption that young people will be involved at all stages, unless there are good reasons for that not to be the case, in which case we would expect you to kind of demonstrate why you've made those decisions. Something around co-production requiring adults to adapt their practice to ensure that their approach is accessible for young people. So not just about young people being able to take part, but about adults changing how they work to make sure that it's accessible. And flexibility being the key, as I've mentioned already. So what does that actually mean in practice for this funding call? Oh, I have gone there. What does that mean in practice for this funding call? So for this funding call, it is important that either individual young people or an identified group of young people must be part of the proposal. Now, we're really aware, as Joe has already said, that these are extraordinary times, and that this is not about doing things perfectly. Okay, so we're aware that there might be some things that need to happen slightly differently because of COVID, but equally not using the current circumstances as an excuse not to involve young people in developing the proposal, and kind of needing to be creative and flexible within what we do and find new ways of involving young people. We need proposals to clearly demonstrate how they were informed by young people's views. Now, that might be by specific young people who are involved in the proposal. It might be by a previous project that people have worked with young people on. It might be by literature that already talks about what young people, what their experiences are, what their views are, what they have already said that they want. As I said before, the proposal clearly indicates how young people will be involved in the whole research process. And if young people won't be involved in some of those aspects, we really would like you to indicate why you've made those decisions. How the adults involved in the process will support and enable young people to be involved, and how adults will also adapt their practice to ensure that the project is accessible young people. And finally, this point about demonstrating how the team will work together. So how will you work together to make decisions about the research and to ensure that co-production is followed through, right through the process. And in terms of the support that we can offer around co-production, we can, as Alice is going to talk about a little bit later in terms of building your research team, we can link researchers to young people or to other projects working with young people who might be interested in your particular research idea. We will be providing a reading list of resources related to co-production, which will be on our website in the next few days. We can provide advice to individual applicants about how to integrate co-production into your proposal, and that would be either a telephone conversation or an online conversation with myself or with Pete, who is based down in Cardiff University, who also has a responsibility for young people's engagement. And then finally, and you'll hear a little bit more about this later, but further advice on co-production can be provided through our feedback sessions, which will be coming up at the beginning of June. And at those feedback sessions, people can talk to members of our advisory group, our youth advisory group, as well as members of our adult management group. So if anybody has specific questions about young people's involvement, obviously feel free to put them in the question and answer now, and we'll answer them as we go along. But also, if you want to email, there's an email at the bottom of this slide, and if you could, it would just be really helpful if you could put the subject matter as young people and then your own project name, just so that we can ensure that those emails go to the right people who'll be best able to answer your question.